At this time, I'll call cause number 99736E in the interest of. We're here today for our adversary hearing. We are conducting this to examine or finding good cause and agreement of the parties. We'll take announcements first.
Daniel Trout for the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services. We're present, ready, Your Honor.
Bill Taylor representing the mother of the children, Amber Jeffries. She is present. I'm present. We're ready.
Tracy Riley representing Keon Mathis.
Stacy Zavala on behalf of the children.
All right, Ms. Riley, you represent Mr. Mathis, and you had some issue you needed to address first.
Yes, Judge, just briefly, and I apologize. Mr. Mathis is currently in the Potter County Jail, where he is charged with a homicide that I also represent him on. So he will not be present for today's hearing.
That's fine, Ms. Riley. Did he want to appear?
He understands that he is not in a position to be able to do anything for the children right now.
Does that translate to he's agreeing to the department being named temporary management server?
I wasn't able to get as far as the fact that he is in agreement, Judge, just that he understands he's not in a position.
Okay.
Because I think he would like the children to remain with Denver.
I understand your obligation. My concern is that you don't really have his agreement, and you're going to be absent for a significant portion of the hearing. Maybe you need to look at a reset date when you would be available. What's the status of locating Mr. Harris or Mr. Johnson?
We were able to get Mr. Harris served on 3-4. Don't believe Mr. Johnson has been found yet, Your Honor.
And Ms. Jeffries was served, correct?
Ms. Jeffries was served on 3-3, Your Honor.
Do we have any information about Mr. Johnson?
We've not sent out. I don't have any information on Mr. Johnson, Your Honor. I would call Emily Foote first, Your Honor.
Okay, Ms. Foote, if you will raise your right hand, and you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you'll give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Foote, would you state your name for the record, please?
Emily Foote.
And Ms. Foote, how are you employed?
I work at Amarillo Independent School District.
And in what capacity do you work for them?
I am the attendance clerk in the office.
Are you familiar with the children?
Yes.
And how are you familiar with them?
They were students at our school in first grade and third grade.
Have you had an opportunity to review the attendance records of those children?
Yes, sir.
And did you send a copy of the attendance records to Ms. Archie?
Yes, sir.
We'll start with exhibit number 1, Kara Jeffries. How has her attendance been at school?
She has missed a total of 56 days. 23 of those were excused. 33 of those were unexcused.
So right at about half of the days.
Yes, sir.
And on exhibit number 2 with the Pineda child, what is his attendance records?
It is the same. He has missed 56 days as well total. His was 22 excused and 34 unexcused.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Foote, thank you very much for logging in with us. We appreciate your time, and you're free to go at this time. All right, Mr. Trout, who's your next witness?
Your Honor, next I would call Dr. Rachel Anderson. In Your Honor, in just in the essence of time, I would ask if parties would stipulate that Ms. Anderson's an expert in this as in her field. Dr. Anderson, would you state your name for the record, please?
My name is Rachel Anderson. I'm a general pediatrician at Texas Tech.
Are you familiar with the child as Jeffries?
First met on January 28th, and that was his first visit with me.
And what had he been in Northwest Texas for?
Mom was concerned that he had stopped breathing and had performed CPR, and he was brought by EMS where he was having respiratory distress, so trouble breathing. He was admitted to the ICU at that point.
Do you know what caused that respiratory issue?
The thought overall, he tested positive for a few viruses and bacteria, but it was an infection causing pneumonia.
Viruses like that or sicknesses like that, how long does it take to get to the point that it was?
Sometimes kids can get very sick very quickly with viruses. It's complicated in his case because he is a premature baby, and so he's more susceptible to those problems than another child that was born at full term.
So a premature baby, it is more concerning.
Yes, definitely.
When you first saw him, how was he?
When I saw him, I was a little bit concerned. So the hospital called me on the 15th, so January 15th, to see him immediately after discharge. So we made him an appointment the next day with me. That appointment was not kept. And so then we had to try to make another appointment. He saw my nurse practitioner the Monday after, so about 4 days after. And then he eventually got to me on the 28th. So I saw him significantly after that first hospital stay, and he was actually sick again with RSV at that point.
And was he still having, RSV, so he was still having respiratory issues?
Yes, he had gotten better in between, but then had another virus that he got. And that appointment was scheduled. And so one thing that I am a little bit concerned with this is that are we showing up to the physician when we need to show up? Is how ill is he? That sort of thing.
What was his weight like?
So I've got it all in kilograms, so I'll tell you in percentiles mostly. So when he was born, mom didn't have very much prenatal care, so we didn't know exactly how early he was. By our estimation from the NICU, he was about 34 weeks, which is about a month and a half early. So at that point, he was hitting about 5th percentile on his weight, so he's 2.2 kilos at that point. When he came back into the hospital, that first visit in the hospital when he had CPR and was very ill, he was 2.4 kilos. So he went from 2.24 to 2.4. With that, he dropped down under the curve. And so I was concerned about seeing that weight. When he was in the hospital, he gained a good amount. And then when he was out, we kind of stagnated again. So I saw him for that one visit in between, and he was very low. He came back with grandma, her name's Sabrina, and his weight had significantly improved after we had worked on his weight for a little bit.
When a baby falls under the curve, what does that mean?
So the big concern with a premature baby, and if they're not gaining weight, we're struggling. We can't give ourselves enough calories for the immune system. So his immune system would be a little bit lower. Development falls behind, and just overall health falls behind. They did mention in the ER notes very significantly that he looked very thin. He looked very ill, that sort of thing initially. And he did look very thin when I saw him. He was, up and smiling and looked otherwise okay when I saw him in the clinic, but he was still very thin. The last visit I saw him, he has gotten much better. He has a little bit more fat on him, a little bit more rolls. So we're going in the right direction.
And with a premature child that's under the growth chart at that time, what concerns does that give you?
I think one of the big ones with this case is that he just needs to be followed a lot more closely. He was discharged from the NICU and told to follow up in a day or two. And he was discharged on November 6th, told to follow up in 1 to 2 days. Unless I'm mistaken and he went somewhere else, he had an appointment scheduled on November 21st. So that was 15 days later that was canceled. And then another appointment that was made for December 4th, also here, that was canceled at Texas Tech. So we've canceled 2 appointments, and then he wasn't seen until he was admitted to the hospital, unless I don't have those records from somewhere else.
So counting those 2 prior to the hospital visit and with you, is that a total of 4 visits that have been missed with him?
Okay, so yes, we have the 11/21 that was canceled, the 12/4 that was canceled, and then after the hospital visit, the 1/16 was canceled. When I saw him with the RSV, I asked to see him in a week, and that one was a no-show on February 3rd. After that, grandma brought him in to see me on February 19th.
And with your office, did y'all try to reach out to mom and try to see where she was and to try to get her to the visits?
I've asked a few times. I talked with the social worker and with the nurse to get her to appointments. We also knew that there was a CPS case, and so we reached out to the caseworker to see if we could get help getting him to his appointments.
With a baby with these type of issues going on and missing appointments, do you, in your opinion, is that any type of medical neglect or physical neglect?
Obviously, I'm a pediatrician. I think every kid should get their well child check appointments, but the reality is most well childs, like, we catch things, but it's not too big of a deal. But a child that's a premature baby, that's not growing, that we've already done CPR on, and he was in the ICU, these appointments need to be followed, because we might be missing something that we could have caught that would help increase his life expectancy. He's at a higher risk of death because all this has happened previously. And so we do need to be following him as closely as we can and making sure that we are following up on certain things and that his lungs sound good and all that sort of stuff.
And you said you saw him on February the 18th, 19th, I believe. 19th.
Let's see. I saw him on January 28th, and then I saw him on February 19th. Those are the 2 appointments I've had.
And had you prescribed or put him on a different formula?
Yes, so the hospital actually put him on a formula called Fortini. It is a high calorie formula for sometimes premature babies, but babies that aren't gaining weight well. And it's been a little bit notoriously hard to get. The hospital likes to do it because it helps with weight gain. When I saw him in the clinic, we were still doing just a regular infant formula. His weight hadn't been great, so I gave Mom a WIC form to try to get the Fortini again, and we tried to do it through insurance, and I think we just struggled getting that formula. From what I understand, I think after the hospital, he hadn't been on the Fortini even up to the February 19th visit when he was gaining weight well. So when he was gaining weight well, he was gaining weight on a normal formula. So I think that it was how often are we feeding? Are we getting him enough calories? Because he gained weight appropriately on that formula.
Okay, and that was going to be my next question. If a child like this is claimed to be being fed regularly, they should be gaining some sort of weight, correct?
So that's always a hard question because you can't tell what a baby's metabolism is, and some babies will need higher calorie formulas. And so I think the hospital and the dietitian at the hospital wanted to try to get as much weight gain as they could because we were behind. But it is encouraging to me to see that he was gaining weight even on an regular infant formula.
Okay. And if a child that for months has not been gaining weight and then all of a sudden in a short period of time gains some weight, does that signify to you one way if it's the formula just started working, or do you believe it was a lack of feeding on a regular basis?
So in studies, about 95% of the time, there's a calorie problem. We're not getting the amount we need. So whether it's that he just was not being fed regularly or he was just not eating quite enough, I can't really tell you the exact reason, but he wasn't getting enough calories in that time frame. And now he's getting enough calories to grow. I never want to blame anybody for not specifically feeding their baby, but if we had been able to see him, we could have done a lot more teaching about how to feed him, because sometimes premature babies are harder to feed. They don't feed great. They have trouble gaining weight. So it's more of maybe an education piece that we really, really needed to get down for that.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Taylor?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I was muted and didn't realize it. When you saw him on the 19th of February, you said that he was gaining weight well. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I believe you had said earlier that Grandma was the one who brought him in that day.
Yes.
He was not yet on the, what do you call it, the special formula?
Yes, the special formula. I don't believe I know he had a little bit when he was in the hospital, and he gained amazing weight in the hospital. So he gained 55 grams a day in the hospital, but after discharge until that first visit, he only gained 8 grams a day, which is not sufficient. But between my first and second visit, he had gained 37 grams a day. So that was wonderful weight gain that I like to see. And that was with grandmother. And I will say both women that brought him in knew, to me asking the questions, they knew how much he was taking. They knew his bowel patterns. It seemed to be that they were trying to feed him well when I talked to him for both visits.
By both women, you're talking about Vember and her mother?
Yes.
I believe my question was, he was not yet on that special formula at Fortini?
Right. He was not on that. From what I know, he did not get that Fortini formula.
And you had approved until such time as they could get him on that formula. You had approved him being on the special Similac?
Yes.
And that's what he was on when he came in with grandmother on the 19th of February, gaining weight well.
Yes.
Now, I will pass the witness, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Riley?
I don't have any questions, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Zavala?
Dr. Anderson, you were just asked about that last visit, and you said that 2 women brought him in. Are you sure that the other woman there was Vember?
No, what I was saying. So even when I met with Vember that first visit, she knew how much he was eating, knew his bowel patterns and things like that, but his weight was just not doing well at that point. When Sabrina brought him in, Roshonda came with Sabrina. And so we talked at that point, and she knew the feeding, the weight was good, all of that.
Okay, so Vember wasn't there at that
No.
last visit.
And at the first visit, Bember was there and Sabrina was on FaceTime with us too, and was having some respiratory distress at that point too. And so we were talking through that.
I pass the witness.
Dr. Anderson, since the weight gain, does it put Isaiah back on the chart, or is he still under on the chart?
So the visit on the 19th put him pretty much at the chart line. And so I think he was at the 3rd percentile on the 19th. Since that point, he actually has jumped up and is on the 19th percentile. So he's continued to gain significant weight since that visit.
With a child, so he was born, I believe, in October. So the child that goes from October to January with kind of stagnant, not gaining weight like he should, and then within a matter of about 3 weeks gains good weight. To you, does that signify that something changed more? Was it more on the feeding pattern or something changed within him?
I think that he was being fed appropriately in the past since he got to the hospital. I think he's been fed appropriately. So, and then when it after that we stagnated and then started getting fed more and he's done better.
Okay. You said when you first met him in January that mom seemed to know the feeding patterns and the bowel movements, but up to that point, he had not been gaining weight, correct?
Right. In the hospital, he gained a significant amount, but when he got out from the hospital, his weight had gone, he's always been gaining small amounts, but not sufficient enough.
Okay. So prior to that, if he would have been being fed as mom told you in that appointment, he's theoretically gaining weight, correct?
I think so, yes.
Did that give you concern that he wasn't?
Yes, and so we were adjusting, trying to feed more, doing the education piece of it. And so my ask at that point was a follow-up visit in a week that didn't happen.
I appreciate it, Dr. Anderson. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Taylor, any further questions?
Yes, briefly, Your Honor. I believe he was discharged from the hospital on the 15th of January. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then little more than a month later, on the 19th of February, when grandmother brought him in, you were comfortable with the fact that he was gaining weight well at that point.
Yes.
At the first visit, when Vember brought him in, you said that grandmother was actually there on FaceTime?
Yes, grandmother was on FaceTime.
So Vember had her mother participating and assisting her even back then?
Yes.
Okay, I'll pass the witness, John.
Okay, Mr. Trout, anything else?
No further questions, Your Honor.
Dr. Anderson, thank you very much for logging in. We appreciate your time and we appreciate your attention to this child. Thank you very much. All right, who's next, Mr. Trout?
We call Rashonda Archie, Your Honor. Ms. Archie, would you state your name for the record, please?
Rashonda Archie.
Ms. Archie, how are you employed?
I am a caseworker with the FPS.
Are you familiar with the children we are on?
Yes, sir.
And how are you familiar with those children?
I have been working with the family since November. So I've been working with them, seeing them 3 times a month since then.
Okay. And what type of case were you working with them?
It was an order to participate service with the department while we monitored the kids. So
what type of services was mom supposed to be working?
mom was supposed to be doing a mental health evaluation, parenting course. She was also supposed to be doing drug counseling due to a positive hair follicle she had back in November. And she was supposed to be doing a psych evaluation as well.
And in your time working with the case, has mom started any of these services?
No, she hasn't. Oh, and I forgot to add that she is supposed to be doing services with St. Francis. She did have a caseworker with them by the name of Tori. She never moved past phase 1, so we never really made any progress on this case at all.
Did you ever work with mom to try to get these services set up?
I did. With not being on WIC, I actually applied with her. I know that they've called her, but she never followed up with them. I even tried to go up to the WIC office myself to try to get him on the recommended formula, but they would not allow me to do so without mom. I've offered transportation. I did take her once to TPC, or Texas Panhandle Centers, and she was supposed to go for a follow-up, but she did not follow through with that. What we get, it's like we will make appointments, but we would never follow up with them.
You helped mom try to get some things set up, and much like what we just heard Dr. Anderson say, there's missed visits and no shows on appointments. Is that correct?
That's correct.
During your case, how many times did you meet with mom? Approximately how many times do you meet face to face?
Almost about 13 or 14 times.
Does mom have transportation issues?
At the beginning of the case, she did. Up until early February, she got transportation. So at that point, she did have transportation.
Prior to that, when she didn't have transportation, was mom aware that you could help provide transportation and get her to where she needed?
Yes. Myself and Tori were very adamant that if she needed transportation, to let us know. The times that I did pick her up are the times that she did let me know.
With what type of appointment was she having with them?
The follow-up was for her to actually get her mental health evaluation. The first one, I believe what she told me is that kind of discussed like her living dynamics and things like that, more of like a get to know. And the follow-up was for her to actually get her mental health evaluation.
And to your knowledge, at this point, she still has not done that.
To my knowledge, no.
Did mom make any concerning statements to you that prompted going to TPC?
She has been dealing with postpartum, so she has mentioned it to myself and the St. Francis worker. To me, she just mentioned like the postpartum part to the St. Francis worker, which they've called me on when they're together, where she's also made comments about wanting to give up. So those were the things that was concerning. At one point, she wanted to go to the pavilion, which was supposed to take the place of her going to TPC that Friday. But that Friday, she did not go to neither one.
Did you attempt to help with transportation to the pavilion?
I did not. Tori, the worker, did. And whenever she could not get a hold of mom, she called me. And at that point, we ended up having to do a wellness check because we were not able to get a hold of Vember or Sabrina at that time.
With the wellness check, were they able to get up with them?
Yes, at Sabrina's house, we were able to see the children and make sure they were safe. Vember did end up calling me in the process when the cops were already on their way. I did express to her why we had to do the wellness check.
Did mom state she wanted to go to the pavilion?
Whenever that Friday, whenever we talked, she did say that whenever she talked to her job, they told her she had to give like a 2-week notice. So that was the reason why she was not able to go ahead and proceed with going to the pavilion.
After that 2-week notice, did she attempt to go to the pavilion?
No, she has not.
Mom originally wanted to go to the pavilion, but then changed her mind due to her job.
That's correct.
Did you ever have conversations with mom about the children's school?
Yes, we've had conversations about it. One specifically is whenever I took her to the Texas Panhandle Centers on the way back home, we went and got her apartment application. And from there, I told her, like, she has to make sure these kids get to school. She did express that she's trying, but she admitted that it is just her not waking up because she's tired due to work. So I did mention to her about setting an alarm on her phone, and she said she would.
Where does mom work?
She works for Amazon.
And do you know how often mom works?
She's been expressing to us that she works every day overnight, except on Wednesdays and the weekends. But she expressed that she was working full time.
Have you seen any discrepancies in that?
After the removal with the paperwork where she was requesting an attorney, she put on there that she's working 10 hours a week and only 40 hours a month.
So instead of 40 hours a week, it's 40 hours a month?
That's correct.
When was the last time you saw?
The last time I saw was on 2/21, which is the day of the removal.
Okay. And how was he doing at that time?
He was good. He was very active with everyone. He was happy. There was no concerns whenever everyone had him. He was just a very lovable kid. Everybody just wanted to hold him. So.
And we asked for this removal due to mom's lack of participation in the order to participate.
That's correct.
And due to still the concerns of he's doing better, but there's been a lot of concerns with him. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And for the other children missing half their days of school.
That's correct.
From working the case and working with mom, do you believe it's in the best interest of the children to remove and to help mom get through the hurdles she's got in front of her right now?
I do.
Do you believe, just talking to mom in your conversations with her, that she needs to follow through with her assessments, with getting the help that she thinks she needs?
I do.
And do you believe that it's in the best interest of the children at this time to stay in a safe, comfortable environment while mom works on those things?
I do.
At one point, and during the removal, the children were staying at grandma's. Is that correct?
That is correct.
How many people were living in that apartment, in that house or apartment?
When the kids were first safety planned to Sabrina's, it was just 5 kids there. I would say around the beginning of February, we learned that another family was living there. So it ended up being 12 children in that home because it was
How many
7
adults?
kids got added to the home.
So 12 kids total, how many adults?
I would say 4 adults.
Okay, so we have about 16 people living in this. Is it a house or an apartment?
It's an apartment.
Where was Vember?
She was staying at the apartment that she's been at over off of 7th Street.
Why were the children not with Vember? Why were they with grandma?
The reason being is because at one point we were not able to get a hold of Vember. And that was at the point where she was supposed to go to the pavilion when Tori went to go pick her up. Vember was not responding to anyone. No one has heard from her. When asking Sabrina or her sister-in-law, Shantara, they would say they do not know where she's at. So due to the fact that we didn't know where the whereabouts where the children were, that's why we made that decision.
And you said we made that decision. So did the department place the children with grandma or Vember place the children with grandma?
The department placed the children with grandma.
Okay. And as this case progressed, did the concerns become that, and one of the reasons for asking for the removal, that there was no protection from Vember picking the children up?
That's correct.
And for the health and safety of the children, do you believe it was in the best interest to ask for the removal?
I do.
Where are the children placed now?
Is placed in White Deer. His foster parent actually texts me every week with updates. He's doing really well. He's hitting milestones. He's now weighing 12 pounds. He is still seeing Dr. Anderson as well. Are placed together. They are in Lubbock. They are doing well. They're enrolled in school. When I speak to, because she does call me sometimes, she is happy. She said her and McCaffrey, and they're doing well.
Objection, non-responsive, Your Honor.
Sustained, just answer what he asks.
Okay, they're in Lubbock.
All the children seem to be doing well.
Yes.
Are the 2 oldest going to school?
Yes, they are.
Are they enjoying school?
They are.
Are you asking today that the court award temporary managing conservatorship to the department
Yes, sir.
and for mom to work services
Yes, sir.
and any of the fathers that are able to work services for?
Yes, sir.
And if we are able to be in contact with them, try to get paternity resolved on the fathers.
Yes, sir.
And do you believe that's in the best interest of the children?
I do.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes, thank you. I'm a little bit confused. You removed the children on the 21st of February, is that correct?
That's correct.
You removed the children from grandmother, not from Vember, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you said that you had placed the children at grandmother's. When was that?
The children were safety planned there on, it will have been February the 6th.
And you're saying it was not Vember who placed her kids with grandma, it was you or the department?
Yes, sir. At the time, yes.
She actually gave her mother a written document giving Sabrina her permission to have the kids, correct?
Well, I've never seen a written document from Vember that stated that information.
Okay.
We had a safety plan for the kids to reside with Vember.
A safety plan placing them at grandma's?
Placing them at grandma's.
Okay, so Vember signed that,
She did.
agreeing to them being there, and the department did not actually remove them until you took them from grandma on the 21st.
That's correct.
The only reason you're questioning Vember's statements regarding her employment was because of what she put in the application for appointment of counsel. Is that correct?
Yes.
I understood basically from your testimony that you think Vember's trying. She stated that she's tired. There was a time when she made the statement that she just kind of felt like giving up.
That's correct.
But she did not ever make a statement that she was wanting to commit. To your knowledge.
Not to me directly, no. That would be with the St. Francis worker. She was more open talking to her. So that statement was made to Tori, not me.
Okay, object to the hearsay, Your Honor. She has never made a statement about wanting to commit to you, correct?
That's correct.
Why did she want to go to the pavilion? What did she tell you about that?
That day, Tori called me and she was with Vember at a visit that morning. She said that Vember was making some concerning comments about wanting to, and that her mental health is bad, and that's why she was wanting to go into the pavilion. I told Vember if that's something she's wanting to do, I'm on board with that. And it shows a strength that she's addressing her mental health.
But then she had difficulty getting off from work to go.
That's correct.
Well, I'll pass the witness.
Thank you. Ms. Fry?
Yes, just briefly, Your Honor. Have you had any contact with Mr. Mathis?
I have, yes. I've been
Okay.
with Keon twice.
Okay, and he has not had, just to make it clear, he has not been at home for any of the absences of the children, correct?
That is correct.
And he has not been in a position to be assisting in getting the child to get the baby to any visits or to the doctor, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and Keon has indicated to you that he's willing, if he were in a position, he's willing to do whatever he would have to do, and he would be willing to work any sort of safety plan if he were able to, correct?
No, he has not told me that. The only thing we discussed is paternity, and I asked about any next of kin, and he mentioned his mother to me. That's the only thing we.
Have you asked him to do any services?
No.
Okay. All right. So he hasn't told you, no, I won't cooperate. You just haven't had that conversation. Am I right?
That's correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure we got that clear. Okay. Pass the witness.
The kids were placed in a safety plan with grandmother. You said February 6th.
That's correct.
At that time, there were fewer people in the home.
Yes.
The plan, once they were placed there, was to have mom continue to be the source of transportation to both school and medical appointments, correct?
That's correct.
And mom was very aware of that.
Yes.
So the plan was they were going to be living with grandma. Mom was going to come every morning, take them to school, was going to come and take or anybody else who needed to the doctor.
That's correct. That is what she agreed to.
Because grandma doesn't have her own source of transportation, or at least she didn't at that point.
That's correct.
So from February 6th up until the appointment on February 19th, that's when we heard from Dr. Anderson that began putting back on that weight.
That's correct.
So when it was with Vimber, there was not the sufficient weight gain, but then with grandmother, there was.
Yes, that's correct.
And that February 19th appointment, it was set that Vimber was going to show up and drive everybody to the appointment. What
That's
happened?
correct. Grandmother ended up showing up about 10 minutes late, and she told me that I asked how did she get there, and she said her son James brought her.
Vimber knew about the appointment.
Yes, that's correct.
Vimber didn't make it there to drive them to the appointment.
That's correct.
When the department places in this kind of family situation that was going on before the act of removal, when the department says, okay, we need these kids to go and stay with grandmother, is that a court order?
No, it isn't.
If at any point Vimber wanted to come and pick up the kids and take them, there was nothing in place that could stop that.
She did have to be supervised. So, but if she wanted to come get them, that's fine. But Sabrina would have to have gone with her, but she had to be supervised with the kids.
Okay. But there was no lasting court order in place at that point.
That's correct.
So one of the fears that led to removal was we have no assurances that these kids will continue to get to school and will not just go back to Vimber.
That's correct.
Did I understand you correctly that on February 21st, when the removal happened and you were looking for the kids to pick up, I was at school?
Yes.
Okay. But wasn't?
No, I was at school. Both of those children were both at school on the day of removal.
Who were the kids that you said were with Vimber on that day?
On that day, they were with Sabrina that day.
Okay. You worked with Vimber to try to keep the kids with family and said, hey, we can move to your to your mother, to their grandmother, and you can provide the transportation. But that didn't work.
Yes.
I pass the witness.
Ms. Archie, during the course of your order to participate case, have you asked mom to drug screen for you?
I have.
Has she done that?
She has not up until February. We have a negative UA on February the 19th.
Okay. How many screens did she miss prior to that?
Just January. She was asked in December, and it was a negative as well. So we have a December and a February.
But mom missed the January?
That's correct.
Did she no-show, or did she give you an explanation of why she didn't make that one?
I can't exactly remember exactly what she said, but she did give me a reason as to why she did not test that day.
And did she tell you that ahead of time, or was it a no-show and then she told you later?
It was a no-show, then she told me.
Mr. Taylor asked you earlier about the statements concerning statements that mom had made, and you stated they weren't made to you. But the St. Francis worker called you while she was with mom, and she explained to you what was going on. And then did you talk to Vember after that?
Yes, I was on speakerphone and I talked to Vember. And that's when I told her that I consider that being a strength of her wanting to go to the pavilion to address her mental health.
Did mom deny making those statements to Tori?
She did not. She was actually crying that day.
And then y'all held a family group conference. Did mom discuss having depression at that time with you?
Yes, she did address her, say that she is having trouble with her mental health.
And at that time, did y'all also discuss with mom that it was not a weakness, but a strength for her to ask for help and to try to get these help?
Yes, we did.
And was that also when it was discussed to try to get to the pavilion and get her to help?
Yes, that was at that time. She agreed that she would go to TPC that Friday to get her mental health addressed.
That still has not been completed.
As far to my knowledge, no.
Is it a concern that mom is admitting to having these issues, but is not following through on her help for that?
Yes, it is.
During the course of your case, did you find out, or did mom tell you who the fathers of the children were?
She admitted to that Trayvon was the father to. Father is unknown. Keon Mathis is the father to, and Anthony Dunn is the father to.
And Anthony Dunn is deceased.
Yes, that's correct.
And Mr. Mathis is currently incarcerated on an allegation of murder, correct?
That's correct.
And is he charged with the alleged murder of Mr. Dunn?
I believe he is charged with for it. Yes.
Okay. All right. And you said that Mr. Mathis had given his mother's name?
He did.
Is that somebody that y'all have looked into at this point or not yet?
I have not contacted her, but I did run her background in prior CPS history. So I did look into her. Yes.
Okay. Was there any concerning backgrounds on that?
No.
Okay. You mentioned, I think I heard you mention that he would also mentioning paternity. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. By that, do you mean he mentioned wanting paternity testing, or is he wanting to be adjudicated? What did he mention on that?
He's admitting to being the father to.
Okay, he is admitting. Okay.
Yes.
And due to an unknown father, not knowing where one father is, one being in jail and one being deceased, we don't have any course of action to place with any of those fathers. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And out of the four alleged fathers, you have just Mr. Mathis has given his mother's name, and that's the only other family member you have.
That's correct.
Okay. Why was when the department removed and placed the children, why were children not placed back with grandmother?
Due to the living conditions, there was too many children in that household.
Okay. And you said living conditions, but it was the conditions of the home were fine, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
The home seemed to be clean and appropriate.
It was always clean and appropriate. Yes.
Okay. It was just the situation of 16 people living in a 3-bedroom place.
That's correct.
Okay. Were they still having school issues?
They were, but they were trying to get the transportation situated. I worked with the transportation to try to get it set up. So there was a delay due to the lady having an illness. Vember did say that she would take the kids to school, but it ended up being James that was the one that was taking them to school instead of Vember.
Another one of the main concerns for the removal was it was not mom doing what she was supposed to be doing. She was not following through on transporting the children, not following through on her appointments, and y'all were having constant issues of getting in touch with mom.
Yes, there have been moments where she'll just stop responding and go MIA. We weren't able to get a hold of her at all.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. I'll pass the witness.
All right, Mr. Taylor, any further questions?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. From the date of placement at grandma under the safety plan on February 6th to the date of removal on February the 21st, while Vember may not have done what you wanted her to with regard to services, she did not ever violate the service plan by trying or even attempting to take any of the children from grandmother, correct?
That's correct.
Or visit any of the children without being supervised, correct?
Yes, sir.
The children attended school as appropriate?
Yes. James was taking them to school, and then once transportation began, we actually got confirmation of transportation during appointment when
Excuse me,
Sabrina talked.
non-responsive, Your Honor.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay, it almost sounded like maybe she wasn't clear about your question, Mr. Taylor, but I'll agree it was non-responsive, so you can go ahead and rephrase your question or Probably.
Okay. From the time that Vember signed the safety plan, the children were placed with grandmother. That's February the 6th. So February the 21st on date of removal, there have been no attendance problems at school. Is that correct?
That's correct.
When you removed the children, they were being fed and clothed and well cared for. And I believe you even mentioned I was happy. Is that correct?
On the day of the appointment, yes. Other than that,
Okay.
yes.
And then when they were removed on the 21st, did they still appear to be well cared for and fed?
Yes.
And we've already heard from Dr. Anderson that she was very pleased with the weight gain that was showing, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the entire issue wasn't a fear that Vember would take the children from grandmother, because she had made no sign that she was going to since the day that you agreed to this safety plan placing them at grandmother's, correct?
Yes.
And you're showing February the 21st as date of removal, not February 6th. So it was Vember agreeing to that safety plan that put them at grandma's, correct?
Yes.
Because if she hadn't agreed to it, y'all would have removed the kids immediately, right?
Yes.
So the overcrowded condition on the 21st is the only thing I've heard that justifies removal. Was it explained to you that that was a temporary situation that they intended to cure immediately?
No.
Are you aware that grandmother is not there in that location? She's in a new apartment with no one there except her and her older sister, Felicia Martinez?
If that's the case, that happened after the removal, not during.
Okay. Okay, but at the time of the removal, the apartment was too crowded, so that's why you took the kids.
That's correct. Along with the medical concerns.
The medical concerns that Dr. Anderson has already testified to were not a concern as of the 19th because grandmother was handling the situation.
Objection, Your Honor. I believe that's a misstatement. I don't think she said medical concerns are not an issue. I think she said the baby had made some improvements.
You're absolutely correct. I apologize for that, Mr. Trout. That Dr. Anderson has testified to, she was very pleased with the weight gain that Isaiah was showing in grandma's care, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor. I do have one follow-up question, Your Honor. I need to clarify.
Sure.
Ms. Archie, at one point you testified that the two older children were appropriately at school on the date of removal, correct?
Yes, sir.
And at first you said the two younger children were with Vember, and then later I believe you testified that they were with Sabrina, their grandmother.
I never said they were with Vember. When I did the removal, they were with grandmother.
Okay.
I removed them from grandmother's apartment.
They were with grandmother. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Ms. Archie, do you have the school attendance records in front of you?
I can pull them up right now.
The exhibits?
I do now. Yes, sir.
Okay. On the last page of each, you said the children were placed with grandmother on the 6th, correct? In the safety plan?
Yes.
Okay. On the dates of the 7th, the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, are those showing as absences?
They are.
And so those were absences while children were in care of grandmother?
That's correct.
So in that first week or so, we did have issues with the children attending school?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
All right then, Mr. Trout, any further witnesses?
I call Ms. Delgado, Your Honor.
Okay, I'm going to give everybody just a real short break before we start Ms. Delgado then. So everybody take just, and I mean like 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you.